Partnership Workshop. I know a lot of y'all attended that one, so that's number 2, from 5 to 7, February 23rd. March the 2nd, 2021 is our special election. It's going to be held here in the commission chamber, so make sure everyone comes out to vote. That'll be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then March the 4th, 2021 will be a special meeting before the commission meeting to have a swearing in of the new commissioner that was elected on the 2nd. Because the city does not have runoffs, the top winner will go in on the 4th.
All right, do we have any questions for our city clerk? Any questions for our city clerk? All right, then we'll move on to Mr. Large with Innovia, his report.
Thank you. Okay, on our DOT Small Communities Project, The Hill, that construction is continuing. There's actually a opening now. The cycle is open to request funding for another project, and we had discussed the Baywood Drive project. So we're preparing the application for funding for the Baywood Drive project to be submitted to DOT. That cycle closes by the 12th of March. So we'll share that with Courtney and make that funding application to DOT. On our Lighthouse project, we're continuing to prepare the big documents, advertisements for bid, and the specifications. We met with Charlie earlier this week and made a few tweaks to the standard grinder station detail. We have submitted plans to the Water Management District and DEP for their review. On our St. Joe project, I did speak with Bridget Precise, representing St. Joe. I got the understanding from her that our biweekly phone calls may not continue. I asked her to reach out to us if and when she's ready to continue those discussions. So the ball is in their court at this point.
Okay.
The drainage improvements on Avenue A and 5th are complete. The drainage on Avenue A is working well. At this point, we have no word on the Marine Street CDBG award. So we'll let you know as soon as we hear on that.
All right, we thank you very
Okay.
much. Do you all have any questions? Okay, Ms. Kelly?
I'm sorry, I keep going back to when I was mayor. I'm interested in your comments about the St. Joe project. As you may remember, that's been going on a very long time.
Yes.
And we had feasibility studies when I was more important. Has things changed?
Well, the city was actually approached by St. Joe. This was not a city initiative to pursue that project. We did conduct another study, but I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. It's the person who approached the city of Carrabelle from St. Joe in Tallahassee is no longer with St. Joe, so we're working with people out of Panama City, and I think I don't know if she's not up to speed completely at this point. I'm not sure exactly what the
I
issue
guess
is.
my real question is the feasibility study different now than it was 15 years ago?
Yes, I believe it was, before they built out, they looked into connecting to our system, but now
Right.
they have their own system, and they're needing help now running their system.
Are they still pumping?
To my knowledge, they are. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we move on to our advisory board, and we have Carrabelle Waterfront Partnership. I think it must have had a slow month, and so we'll look forward to a report next month. And then we did receive a written report from the Aviation Advisory Board, and if you all have any questions, I'm sure that you can reach out to Courtney or Mr. Sullivan, and, but it's pretty cut and dry. So there's not much going on out there. They're just trying to get the perimeter fence completed. They've had obstacles with the low-lying areas and standing water. All right. So we'll move on from there. And these written reports are always available from the clerk's office for the public, if the public wants to see these written reports. Okay, we'll move on to our public hearing section. And we have ordinance 483, the second reading. Mr. Hartman.
All right. This is an ordinance of the City of Carrabelle, Florida, providing for the amendment of Ordinance 469, providing for purpose, definitions, types of permits and requirements for issuance, fee amounts, and term for use of city boat ramp facilities, providing for repeal of ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith to the extent of such conflict, and providing for severability and establishing an effective date. And this is simply an amendment to the existing boat ramp ordinance to open it up at least for call it an annual permit at the same price that a city resident previously would be eligible for. It opens it up to county residents and property owners.
All right. Does anyone have questions about this amendment to this boat ramp fee ordinance? Any questions? Then are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So we have that motion by Commissioner Allen, second by Commissioner Mathis to approve. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. All right, and then we have this, the second that came in really a short notice today, resolution for local mitigation strategy sent from the county. And Ms. Kelly says there is a typo there in one
Well,
of the
it's
paragraphs.
grammatical. I don't think it's a typo.
Okay.
It's just,
Would you like for her to point that out before
Please.
you? Okay.
I mentioned it to Courtney or Keisha or somebody. I'm sorry, I can't find it right at the,
Had to do with counties.
Somewhere.
And-
yeah, I just, here it is. I question the third word, a third line from the bottom, where it says will reduce the county's susceptibility.
Got it.
I would think it was
Cities.
cities, thank you.
Got it. Okay.
That's it.
So our first resolution of the year, Resolution 01-2021, Local Mitigation Strategy. Actually, I'm sorry, was there more comment on it before I read it?
You're welcome to go ahead and read.
Okay. Sorry. Whereas the City of Carrabelle is vulnerable to the human and economic costs of natural, technological, and societal disasters, and whereas the Carrabelle City Commission recognizes the importance of reducing or eliminating those vulnerabilities for overall good and welfare of the community, and whereas the City of Carrabelle has been an active participant in the Franklin County Local Mitigation Strategy Task Force, which has established a comprehensive coordinated planning process to eliminate or decrease these vulnerabilities, and whereas these proposed projects and programs have been incorporated into the initial edition of the Franklin County Local Mitigation Strategy that has been prepared and issued for consideration and implementation by the communities of Franklin County. And now therefore be it resolved that the Carrabelle City Commission adopts the Franklin County Local Mitigation Strategy to reflect the current need and citizens' desire to identify and implement hazard mitigation initiatives that will reduce the city's susceptibility to numerous hazards. And at the appropriate time, the Commission will develop and submit funding proposals to appropriate agencies to implement the hazard mitigation initiatives identified in the Franklin County Local Mitigation Strategy. That's it.
All right, are there any questions regarding this? Resolution 01-2021?
I move we approve.
Okay. We have that motion by Commissioner Kelly. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, that's by Commissioner Mathis, the second. Any discussion? Okay, and then we'll just repair the one correction that was noted and sign it and get that over there. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, then, are we ready to move on to new business, or do we need to take a break? Ready to keep going? All right, new business. Item 1, discussion and possible action regarding consideration of a tree ordinance requested by Commissioner Mel Kelly. So I will toss it over to Commissioner Kelly since she's requested this item.
Thank you very much. I asked the city administrator to produce a couple of pictures for you. And there it is. We're getting feedback. The picture that was on the screen is a John Sporer picture, which was aired just today. It's called Tree with Stars. You'll notice the stars up in the back. It's the tree I want you to look at. I think it's such a dramatic picture. I hope you will take it into consideration while I'm reading this proposal. In this, my last full meeting as temporary fill-in commissioner, I am asking the ongoing commission members to consider creating and then approving a tree ordinance for the city of Carrabelle. I ask for your consideration and final endorsement based on my discovery of some really beautiful cypress trees. Can you do that one, Courtney? In the middle of a lot evidently being developed here in town. We don't have many cypress trees here, although they were a mainstay of economic development many years ago. Did you know they were used by a former Carrabelle business to make long-lasting coffins? I think, Tamara, did you tell me Mr. Millender owned that business?
No, his father-in-law.
His father-in-law owned the business. Thank you. I mention that because those trees are almost all gone here. Like the longleaf pine and so many other examples, such trees were harvested and have now mostly disappeared. I would like to ask that our forestry department neighbors, including an arborist, be invited to identify and inventory remaining valued trees, specimens, and locations within our city, and use that information to help the attorney and the commission better prepare a protective tree ordinance. We have a very successful historic structure inventory when I was mayor. I believe our city trees can also be identified for preservation and appreciation. Tallahassee has a canopy tree ordinance to protect their special neighborhood view sheds. Perhaps some of you have driven those beautiful roadways featuring live oaks, sweet gum, pines, hickories draped in moss. I love the example just beyond Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, where Magnolia continues into Centerville toward Lowe's and Publix. We don't have those magnificent trees and moss here, but I believe we do have some keepsake trees in isolated locations along public roadways, in our parks, and on city-owned properties. I ask you to look at the one along the fence by the historic old Carrabelle Hotel on Avenue A that Skip pointed out to me. I believe our forestry friends can help us mark and identify such trees of note. It is important to understand that those are the only trees we can legally protect, thanks to a newer Florida ordinance that says the city will have no control over trees on private property. So the keepsake cypress trees that I discovered on the private lot, and Courtney was nice enough to photograph for me, cannot be preserved by city ordinance. There are 173 so-called tree cities throughout Florida. Apalachicola is one of them. That formal designation granted by the Arbor Day Foundation may be more than we wish to promote just now, but deserves your consideration. One of the first requirements is to create a tree care ordinance, which I hope you will consider and implement whether you later seek that Tree City designation or not. The Arbor Day Foundation also requires the designated Tree City community to have a tree board who supports better community tree care, a budgeted community forestry program which commits at least $2 budgeted per capita, which in our case would be $5,556 based on the 2010 census. And finally, an Arbor Day proclamation and observance. Those could be future goals, and grant monies are available for that help. But for now, I am just an amateur who believes a tree ordinance can be of benefit to the city and the citizens in many ways. Cleaner air, shaded streets, and aesthetic beauty demonstrate community pride and a positive environmental image to those who see it, enjoy it, and live amidst it. I have copies of my comments, if you would pass those. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to this subject. I don't expect anything to be done because I know that it is an attorney job, but I have collected enough information that I will give you, Dan, that might be of interest and help to you. Another city in Florida that has a tree ordinance is DeLand. I did try to copy that, but it came out very faint, so it's not what you could use. But I do have the Apalachicola ordinance. I do have some Florida information, tree ordinance. Anyway, I appreciate your indulgence in allowing me to speak to this issue, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any comments or discussion? Mr. Hartman's wanting to speak, so we'll let you.
Yep, if I could just, and obviously the commission can do a variety of things here, but historically, and what I had talked to Commissioner Kelly about also, was that that what's really before the commission is there a desire to look into adopting or coming up with a tree ordinance?
Right.
And if there is, then you all would vote to have P&Z study it. You would give them specific marching orders, the Planning and Zoning Commission, to develop a draft ordinance or simply come back to you with ideas that you could workshop, all these different things. So that's sort of the stage that we are at right now, is that you would provide somewhat detailed direction to P&Z on this item if it's something the commission wants to do, right? Because the commission also can say, this is not something we want to get into right now. We've had, for instance, our mandatory garbage, which we are now getting into, but historically we didn't. So that's where this is. So you have those options certainly available to you, and you make up on your own, but those are the more historical standard options.
And it was not my intention to have it done tonight. That's why I worded it the way I did. I simply hope that the commission at some point will consider the issue when there is deliberation time available.
Okay. I see Mr. Kai, would you please come forward and state your name for the record? Thank you, sir.
My name is Kai Nelson. I own Crooked Creek Land Development. I'm actually the one that was clearing that lot that has those cypress trees there. And I can ease your burden.
Oh,
It says he left them there on purpose.
thank you.
And they look beautiful. We did take out one cypress tree that was extremely large, but it was leaning after a storm and posed a risk to their home. So, and certain trees like cypresses and stuff like that exist in areas that are typically not developed anyways, because they exist in low-lying areas that people typically don't build or even try to clear, because you'll lose a machine in there. So we were tasked to go in there and just take the undergrowth out, and that was actually a massive dump site, which maybe some of the city commission, if they've been here long enough, was familiar with. I mean, I pulled out 10 dump loads of tires, trash, everything you can think of out of there.
Was that in the city limits?
Yes, it
Yes.
was, and I did
fine.
not mention where it was deliberately.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad you've cleaned it up.
Yeah, and
That's
they're working
wonderful.
on getting it all cleaned up with grass and all that kind of stuff. But as far as the tree ordinance goes, I think it would present an undue burdens on the already lacking city budget and the already overtasked city of Carrabelle's work staff. As I've seen in the city of Apalachicola, there is there are people building there, but it is extremely hasslesome to get the approval to go ahead and clear the land that needs to be done to build housing and developments and stuff like that we so desperately need. I feel like we need to focus on zoning and what gets built, but we need to promote building. If we don't promote building, there will be no jobs, there will be no people to work those jobs, there will be no things of that sort. And very little trees get cut in Appalachia for the most part. It is terrible. So you'll have businesses like Tree Help, Top Notch Tree, my business, Three Rivers Clearing. There's a bunch of businesses that, and a lot of people that rely on tractor work that I feel like this would just absolutely hurt them. Although I'll survive as I'm doing a lot bigger projects these days, but I think we need to think of the smaller guys for the future.
It's important to remember that the new Florida ordinance, which I'm sure the attorney is familiar with, stipulates that we cannot regulate on private property, so you would have nothing to worry about in your development.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, in that case, I kind of came in at the tail end of that, but
Well, and actually, I'll clarify on that just because I got a little education on trees. I've dealt with them from the private side in Tallahassee, but the statute that was passed in 2019 does not.
The Florida statute.
Florida statute that was passed in 2019 does not say necessarily that you cannot regulate trees on private property. It allows local governments to do so. However, if the landowner gets basically a certification from a licensed arborist to say that that tree is a danger to persons or property, then the local government cannot tell you that you can't prune it or remove it. But short of that, meaning if you can't get an arborist if you're a private property owner and you don't have that situation, then the tree ordinance would apply to the trees on your property. So that's similar to what Commissioner Kelly was saying, but
I received this information from our Eric Lovestrand. I can't remember what his title is.
Extension officer.
Extension officer. Note, a recent law in Florida bans local governments from regulating tree removal and replanting on private property. The new legislation called Private Property Rights allows property owners to remove, replant, prune, or trim a tree without approval from their local municipality. A property owner will still need to obtain documentation from an arborist that the tree presents a danger. Anyway, that's what I received, and I do have copies of this if you'll pass those to me.
may I say something? I know currently from experience, the city of Apalachicola requires a permit to remove trees, and they actually send somebody out there to tell you which trees you cannot take down for whatever reasons, unless they're not in compliance of that law, or maybe that the verbiage just wasn't transposed as well.
I do have a copy of the Appalachia
And I
ordinance.
think what I stated, I mean, that is the 2019 statute. I'm unaware of any update, but it is consistent with what Commissioner Kelly's saying in that the last sentence that she talked about there was, if the city cannot interfere with you cutting down the tree, if you document that it's a danger with an arborist, certified arborist, that it's a danger to person or property. And that was news to me. I mean, believe me, I've battled on that in Tallahassee on the other side of it, but it's a recent law. I mean, so obviously communities have been wrestling with preserving trees and private property rights. So,
I know the city of Appalachia stopped us from clearing certain trees on vacant lots that weren't anywhere near homes or anything that they definitely didn't pose a danger at all. And even the ones,
And what I'm going to interrupt you is, in that case, yeah, you can't cut it down,
yeah.
right? You'd have to get an
Gotcha.
arborist to say, hey, that tree is threatening a house.
Well,
it's
I
a
think that's where we
property.
have this issue is
Yep.
if we start regulating trees and we burden the city with all this information of, well, we got to worry about this tree, and we need to go over it in P&Z. And then on top of that, it's also a discouragement to development.
I certainly didn't mean for the city to be discouraged.
But I do agree that we need to maybe promote which trees. But I believe, I'd say just about every single cypress or cedar that I've ever come across, most people don't want to take them down because they are different than what we see. So I think that what we're talking about probably encompasses a very small percentage of the trees that we're talking about protecting.
I'd like to thank the city administrator for taking those pictures and showing them for me. They meant a lot. Appreciate it.
Anyways, thank you.
All right, and thank you, Mr. Nelson, for your comments, and thank you, Ms. Kelly, Commissioner Kelly. Do we have any other comments? Okay, Mr. Prentice, please come up and state your name again.
Hello, David Prentice, and I think I might be able to provide some middle ground here. My day job, I work for a large conservation organization, very familiar with the tree species of Florida and the trees that we want and we don't want in our community. And there's only 4 or 5 species of native trees that we want in our community because we have this problem with hurricanes, well, mostly hurricanes. So totally in agreement with you. We need to protect a certain number of species, but there's really 2 of them that are all over our town, and they are a scourge, and that could keep arborists in business forevermore. And those are the laurel oaks and the water oaks. They are taking down the transmission lines, and they're really a danger to our community. So I think providing some technical expertise on a certain number of trees that we would want to protect in this future city ordinance, and really not protecting like the city of Apalachicola is. I have an acquaintance over there that is going through that very thing with a nasty water oak in his yard, and he's fighting the city about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Mr. Prentice. All right, do we have any comments from the commission at this time?
I'll admit I'm a tree hugger. I love them. I like to paint them, and they're beautiful. I understand, though, that some trees are dangerous, but one of the big issues we have now is that pine tree next to the little restaurant.
Okay, put your, they can't hear you.
Oh, yeah, there is a mic there. Okay, and there is a pine tree that's creating a problem for the little restaurant. But going up into Tallahassee the other day, I saw where there was a big oak tree, and they had built the sidewalk up and over the root, and that tree remains today. And when we get to this other tree, I think that we need to keep that in mind. I know that we do need some protection of trees that may be in danger or dangerous to the house, but I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay, thank you.
We could build a sidewalk over that little
I
that's
think,
what I'm saying.
I think Mr. Large came up with a proposal for that.
He's going to present us a proposal. At our CRA meeting, he will present a proposal. So, is there any other comment then at this time? All right, there being no more comments at
I
this,
move we
at
adjourn.
this point, no, we've got
Nope.
one more item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, we do.
Okay, all right, thank you for your presentation.
I
and
took a leaf
will-
out of Mr. Commissioner Mathis's book.
I will certainly read this. All right.
Actually, you don't need a-
Are we ready to move on then to the next item? Item number 2, discussion and possible action regarding the City of Carrabelle considering selling or entering into a long-term lease agreement with the property on Southeast Avenue C that includes the former water plant. This property is known as Tamara Allen Park, and this request is requested by Miss Martha Murray, who is at our podium now. Miss Martha Murray.
Hi, I'm Martha Murray, and first of all, I've got Tamara Allen sitting right here next to me, and I want to make it crystal clear to you and to everyone here that there is nothing in my questions and my comments here tonight to negate, do away with, or anything else about that designation. I respect that, I honor it, and I know a little bit about how it came about. So, it really has nothing to do with that. And really what I want to, this is more of a broad topic. I use this property as an example. This is a property, and I'll admit, I'm particularly interested in this broader concept for that property because it's adjacent to a property that I own. So it's in my personal view shed. But my biggest concern is that it is a horrible eyesore and it's a terrible safety hazard. And I know of not a lot. I admit that I don't know all the details about what the city has and has not tried to do, what folks interested in historic preservation in this community have and have not tried to do. I know a little, but not, I'm sure there's a lot of information I'm personally not aware of. What I really want to ask you all about, and I talked to, just asked Mayor LaPaz about this, and she said, let's get it on the agenda. That's why I'm here. So
I said if you wanted a positive, if you wanted an answer to your questions, you would have to ask the commission.
Okay.
That I can't answer your questions
right.
on behalf of the commission. You would have to ask.
And
the
I
city.
just, and I'm following the mayor's lead
Okay.
to bring it to the correct body. I'm not here to say I want to buy that property. That is not why I'm here. My question is, will the city consider selling off a piece of historic property so that it gains some revenue? It's revenue in instead of expense or revenue neutral, because then it becomes a taxable property. City makes a little cash by a sale, and I think it could be a very interesting location for a business. As a matter of fact, the fellow who did most of the wiring at the Bell when I was doing the restoration, he told me he had his dad and he had done a bunch of wiring there years ago, and he kind of told me a little bit about some of the things that had been planned. And as we all know, the roof has collapsed, and it seems to me like a lot of people would like to see that building saved. There's historic significance there, but there's no money. And what happens to a building, it'll reach the point of no return. And I think it might be wise to sell it so that some private dollars can do the job. And I bring that to you, and I ask you to just, I know it's late, and it's kind of like Commissioner Kelly's thought. It's just, I put this out to you to think about. Not just that property, but properties that the city owns that they can't afford to take care of. Why not put them in private hands? I just kind of ask that really broadly. I think it would be a way to have a kind of a win-win. The last thing I'm going to say about this broad topic, because you might be thinking, nobody in the right mind would buy that. Who'd want to put money into that? That would cost a fortune to fix, on and on and on. Well, people do this kind of stuff. I'm one of those people. Frankly, I'm going to tell you folks, buying the Bell was practically a whim purchase. I was not in the market for a historic property. I was interested in Carrabelle. A local realtor called me one day and said, there's something that's coming on the market that the city is going to sell that you might be interested in. I'm not a contractor. I'm not a developer. I just like old houses. I walked in. I was not in the market for an old house. And this is what I thought. I thought, this is a very cool old house, and somebody has to save it. And I went home thinking, well, I could probably pull that off. And now here we are 5.5 years later, and I feel good about that. I'm glad I did that. So there might be some other nut job just like me who wants to buy something from the city, sink a whole bunch of money into it, just because it's the right thing to do. So that's where I bring my proposal about the water plant. Oops, sorry about that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I will say that I know I would like to see that building repaired. I agreed with you, it is an eyesore. We are planning on fencing that. We still need to run a fence north and south on that to fence that building off. I think maybe there's been a problem with scheduling, but that was part of the job that we did there when we cleared that out to make the area for overflow boat ramp parking. We have tried to see if we could use CRA funds on that just to put a new roof to get it dried in, and that won't work. Ms. Tamara has applied for, you want to speak to that, Ms. Tamara?
I just like to speak to the topic
Okay.
in general.
And then let us know about the application that you did as well.
I will. Because I can't breathe with it on, so it's easier to talk when I can breathe. Okay, so I went back today and just looked through my files. I'm not a very good file keeper. We got our first permission. The city passed the first ordinance resolution in January of 2014 to ask that we would ask the DEP's version in Tallahassee if they would look at that property as we thought it was a contaminated location. And we got selected after a long process for a brownfield grant because it was contaminated land where they had, I don't know, for 50 years, they had filled put gas in the tanks to run the machinery of the water plant. They had spilled gas on the ground and so forth. Then later on, it was used to refill trucks and other things, and gas and things had been spilled on the ground. But it not only was in the ground, it had gotten into the water aquifer there in the area. So they did a brownfield assessment. It took a long time, and then we finally got the report, and they said that it had to be a large amount of toxic earth had to be removed. And for those of you that remember the Sugar Shack, which was a building that was next door to the building that now has no roof, the city water, Carrabelle water plant, they removed the Sugar Shack building because it was contaminated all up under it. They were able to get rid of most of that stuff, but they did find that there were still, even after they had completed that, they waited a year, came back out and sampled. And I spoke today to the regional manager for the Florida Environmental Protection folks about where we are with that now. And I asked her a couple of questions. I said, one is, if we were just wanting to complete the process of getting finished, getting checked off the books for the state of Florida for having a brownfield in Carrabelle, what do we have to do that? And she said that there needs to be another sampling collected. There might have to be some dirt moving, and that there was an opportunity about a year ago to ask for an approval to use that property without having cleaned it up further, but now that's gone away. They took that away. So we can no longer apply for that. And the levels that were found there when it was last looked at would not be acceptable for anything where children might be playing or living in there, unless certain types of mitigation were done. And I don't know, Russell, you can check me on this, but I understand if you can know exactly where it is, you can build concrete on it or asphalt on it in a certain way, and it'll keep it so that you can do other things with the property. But the highest and best thing to do would be to complete the process. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, we have to ask the state of Florida. And I found out there is going to be a grant that they manage that comes from EPA. And the money for that generally comes to the state of Florida to be spent in September because it's part of the federal budget. But if we were to go ahead and request that now and get on the list, that when the money came in Florida, to Florida from the EPA, that it was a very good chance, because we're so far along in the process, that they would choose us to do that. And I know Courtney has had a good bit of correspondence through the past couple of years with different characters up there, but Kelly Kane, I think her name is the last person that's been involved with us. And, they originally were telling us we had to get surveys done and we had to have title work done and all kinds of things. We don't need to do that unless we're about to sell it. If we are going to sell it to, or give it for that matter, but sell it, transfer it to somebody else, then we would have there would have to be residential and commercials restrictions for that property, as to certain things couldn't be done there. That would be part of it would go with the property. I don't
A lien on the property.
A lien on the property, sort of. So
sorts.
that the value of the property would be less than it would be if we had finished. We have total authority. I mean, it's like Mr. Hartman said earlier about something. The city can certainly sell it if they can find somebody who wants to buy a piece of contaminated property. And in fact, the whole property is not contaminated. The only part that's contaminated is right up there near the building. So, okay, that's
Near where the sugar shack used to
exactly
exist.
where the sugar shack used to be.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so if the city decides it wants to go that route, then we can work together with. In fact, they would love it if. They would be delighted to have a workshop for us, a meeting, whatever we would like, virtually on, they use Microsoft products, but anyway, some kind of virtual meeting with us so that we could talk about the options and let them explain it to us and show us drawings and pictures and stuff. And so if the city wants to go in that direction, then they would be glad for us to do that.
And I'll tell the commission, but it's up to the commission as a whole. But personally, I would like to see this project closed out. It's been open for 5 or 6 years.
Well, since 2014,
Okay, so
a long time.
almost 7 years. I
Right.
think it was in the summer when we started on it.
It was.
Okay, so, and that's a brownfield project, and it takes, and we're still not complete with it. And you've got it like a phase 2 now.
So I did find out that they are not planning, normally if you don't complete your brownfield project, they normally file against you and make you pay money for not doing it. This one is so small that they're not gonna do that. But before they sign off on it, they want we don't meet the threshold for what they're gonna spend legal funds
So
for.
you're saying if brownfield projects are not completed, that the property owner gets fined, possibly? Oh, my, okay. All right, let me see if the commission has, and then, okay, do you all have, I see Ms. Kelly has a,
I just would be more than happy to move to complete the cleanup of this project, at least to submit for the grant for EPA that may possibly be awarded in September, if it would mean that we could finish the cleanup on this project, and I would so move.
Would be interested in cost.
A cost.
it's a grant
It's a
funded.
grant.
It's a total, in fact, we don't even have to spend the money and get paid back. They actually, they hire the engineers, they pay the money, they hire the work people, they pay them. And we
Okay.
just,
All
and
right, so
we just have
need
to do the
we're gonna need a
paperwork.
second here shortly to continue discussion. Yes.
Before I would consider selling any land that belongs to the city, the taxpayers would have to advise me to sell.
Okay,
Because
so
it's their land.
right now we have We have a motion on the table. We haven't got a second, and the motion is to complete the cleanup, the hazardous cleanup spill that was, I believe, diesel fuel back in the, way back in the whenevers, the 50s and 60s. And we started a cleanup project back in 2014 with the EPA grant money through the state of Florida, and we have not completed that project yet. So Commissioner Kelly has made a motion for Tamara to move forward to reach out for grant funding to complete that brownfield project.
I'll second
Right.
her motion.
Okay, all right. We have a second by Commissioner Mathis,
Thank you.
and that motion was by Commissioner Kelly. Okay, now let's have some more discussion.
You just answered it,
Okay.
because I wasn't fully aware of what her motion was.
I think I was that,
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
Yes.
you just
All right.
explained it.
Okay.
I believe we
All right.
completed what was part of that.
Microphone.
Right, we completed what was part of that grant.
That we didn't.
We had like brownfield number 1, we had brownfield number 2, we completed that. But in order to move, to get it off the list for the state, there's like brownfield 3 that we need to do.
Okay,
That's
Mr.
fair.
Nelson wants to speak as well. Mr. Nelson.
You want me to take the mic, or?
Yes, please do.
The building, by the way, was built in 1947 as a very important.
And Tamara
water
can
plant.
just, y'all just stay there and go back
Yeah,
and
we'll go back.
spar amongst yourselves.
I'm actually kind of possibly excited to offer a potential solution to this. I'm interested in possibly even, taking on the entire project without any cost of the city at all, and possibly I possess the equipment and the material to remove the contaminated soil and recycle the concrete building into crushed gravel, and as well as I'm possibly interested in acquiring the property, but still leasing it back to the city. And this is just thinking off the top of my head, but leasing it back to the city as a overflow parking lot for an extended period of time, and can also provide the Lime Rock Road base. But that's just off the top of my head and a possibility for you guys to consider.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. We thank you. Okay.
I will say that based on previous suggestions that we look at the building, the actual building that's there with the roof on, and it's perfectly serviceable as a historical building that could be re-roofed, and there's not a lot in that building to be a trouble. I mean, it's just a concrete building with glass block windows. So other than rebuilding the doors and a few things, it's not that complicated a renovation for the building.
Right, the building that's
If
there.
the building has many potential uses and could be, used for lots of stuff. The main part I was trying to make the point about was I have
Brownfield.
lots of ideas about what to do with that historical building, and then they can be totally separate from what might ever happen to
Now,
what we
that
call
building
Tamara Allen Park.
qualifies to be on the National Historic Register,
It
correct?
does.
Okay.
It's a WPA building. It also, it qualifies for hurricane mitigation funds. It qualifies for 2 or 3 other things. But EPA also has funds that once you get all the contamination out of there, they have small rural grants that can be used to help you repurpose it.
So no matter what, it has to be cleaned up first, and that was.
It doesn't have to be, but the city would have to sell it or give it away with the title being restricted. I'm not sure the title is the right part that's
But anyway,
restricted.
right now, we still have a motion on the floor, and we're in discussion. And the motion was to clean up that section where the Sugar Shack
To
used
finish the cleanup.
Yeah, and that section is to the west of the building that exists there now, but it's part of the property. And to go ahead and clean up that section there where the Sugar Shack used to be.
To apply for a grant.
Yes, to apply for a grant to do that. So that is the motion. Let's go ahead and have a vote on that and get that out of the way. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then that motion carries then for Ms. Tamara to reach out to the state and the EPA this, later this summer and see what we can do to finish
Mayor?
that brownfield. Yes, ma'am.
I would like it noted when Tamara reaches out for the grant that the motion was unanimous on behalf of the city requesting the cleanup.
Okay, will you note that in your minutes, Ms. Keisha?
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you all.
Okay, you're welcome. So, yes, who, I can't see. Come forward, please come forward and speak your name. Come forward and speak your name, sir. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Michael Pace, and I'm a local business and property owner. The property of the old city water plant built in 1947 lies within the boundaries of the proposed National Historic District. Just that it's on the map of the district.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That just would mean that you would not register it as a single site for the National Register of Historic Places. It would be within the district.
Okay, oh, Mr. Nelson, please, sir.
One more quick, I'm not gonna take any time, but
Okay,
my original thought is not hard. Concrete. I'm also potentially interested in fixing the building as it sits and creating it into a historic building. That's
okay.
But
all right.
I was under the impression you guys want it tore down.
It was kind of confusing because we had one building already torn down that had contamination underneath, and we still haven't finished that cleanup, and it's set right next to the building that's there now. And my husband and I have been in there, and I would ask Greg if you would describe what, can you remember what we saw when we were in there? I mean, it has a good frame to it.
Good bones.
Yeah.
Yes, it does have good bones. It's a block building, and I would imagine possibly maybe pour concrete into the block wall, possibly, make it a little stronger if that, I don't know what, I'm not a,
What kind of a roof does it
of
need?
that level. The roof needs to be completely replaced.
What kind
yeah.
of a roof?
It was a truss rafters, and so you'd have to go back to something like that, but you could put metal on it or whatever, but
Thank you.
it's in good shape, and it has a good slab in it too, thick, CP.
And were there metal beams in there? Or?
I think there was some metal beams going across, so it's been a while, been several years since I've been in there, so
I
don't quite
don't know
recall.
where anybody's thought about it, but that'd make a good storm shelter in case of a storm.
I was also
Right.
thinking that the city needs storage. If the school is gone, you're gonna have to have a place to keep some things, and you could make it where it could be a little of both, some rooms with some storage and maybe some public access or
Right
something
after
like
the
that.
roof.
I have one question. Tamara, do you know if those blocks and concrete that built that was made by the gentleman where you have the art blocks?
He would have been dead by then, wouldn't he? 47?
Mr. Justice?
Justice?
Yeah,
Marvin?
Mr. Justin.
I don't know for sure. I can go look it up, but I think he might have, I don't know what year he died, but he made buildings the whole time.
Almost every block building in town,
Yes.
yeah.
So, but what we need to do is, what needs to be done, and we know it, is a roof put on it. And we have tried and will continue to try. And, I mean, if Mr. Nelson wants to put the roof on, maybe we'll see if we can figure out how we can get money for the materials.
I will point out, it's not in the CRA now, but when we
Yeah.
do our expansion, it will be in the CRA,
Uh-huh.
so we will have.
We'll have money, but that may be how long? A couple of years down the road before that happens, or?
No.
It's gotta happen by 2022. 2022 is the deadline. Okay. All right. The CRA district and plan that we have now sunsets in 2022. I can't remember what month it is, but we're trying to, the CRA board is trying to expand the district and extend the time. All right. Is there any other discussion at this moment? And I do want to say to Ms. Murray that the city owns very little land in the city limits, very little. I mean, that is valuable property, in my opinion, to the city. We need that property. That's my opinion, though. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I just want to reiterate that my intent really was to generate this kind of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see the city keep that, have it be city property. I'm just trying to be creative about addressing an eyesore in the city. I'm like, well, put it in private hands and maybe fix it. But if there's a public way to do it, I'm not a voter here. I'm a property owner, but not a voter. But I just wholeheartedly support the idea, if there's a way, to keep that building in public hands and get it fixed. And I didn't realize the magnitude of the brownfield problem. I thought that box was checked. But anyway, thank you.
Okay. And that, the city owning so little property is the reason that the city retained the 3 lots out of that property that you bought on the hill, because we have so little property. Okay, Miss Suzanne. Say your name again, please.
My name is Suzanne Woodcock. Can you hear me with my mask on?
Yes.
Okay. I did not know that that was a brownfield area, and I think, I really see that there's potential for the city to take any property they own and do something good with it. Because the city can really do something that would enhance the character of the downtown. So anything, if you need assistance or if there's grants or something you can do, I'd be glad to help if anything like that. I am concerned now, I just heard about the brownfield, because the property beside that where the boat ramp was built, that all the bricks that came from that building, the man beside me dumped that all on our shoreline. So
I don't know if you know where we're talking about.
okay.
Uh-huh.
You're at the wrong spot. The building that was taken down was carried down to Citrus County.
Okay. Well, that's something I can find out later, but they advised that that's where it came from, the building where the new boat parking was. But anyways, anything that the city.
That's the old Millender Son. We're talking about on Southeast Avenue C, not the building next door to the Millender.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had that wrong. But anyways, anything that I could do to help, if the city, a grant or anything like that, it would
Okay.
help the city. I'd be
Thank you.
glad to do that at no charge.
Mhm. Thank you, ma'am. All right, then, is there any further discussion? Always these meetings with nothing on the agenda turn out to be the longest meetings. All right, any further discussion?
I move we adjourn.
Okay, then, we have a motion to adjourn and a second by Commissioner Kelly, second by Commissioner Allen. Is there any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. And Tamara, thank you for that brownfield history.